I still remember that morning, the porridge steaming, her smile too bright, and that bitter scent beneath the oats. My daughter-in-law watched every spoonful like it was a test I needed to fail. I pretended to swallow, dabbed my lips with a handkerchief, and saved the truth for later, because sometimes proof is quieter than pain. That was only the beginning of what came next. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. When I first moved into Graham's house in East Austin, the air still smelled of cardboard and lemon cleaner. My boxes sat stacked by the pecan tree out back, waiting for a place to belong. Callista greeted me at the door with a smile polite enough to sting, a practiced curve of the lips, not the kind that warms you. I told myself it was nerves. I was the mother-in-law after all, the guest who never leaves soon enough. Still, I noted the exits, the kitchen layout, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear like a signal of control. Old habits from nursing die hard. I take stock before I sit down. The next morning, she brought me porridge. "Easy to digest," she said, her tone light but rehearsed. Steam drifted up in thin ribbons, carrying the faint scent of lotus and something sharper, menthol, almost metallic. My stomach tightened. I smiled, lifted the spoon, and let the warmth touch my lips but not my tongue. Then, while she turned toward the fridge, I pressed the spoon to my white-edged handkerchief, folding it like muscle memory. Back in the ICU, I used to do that, collect a sample, mark the time, never assume. "Eat nice for me, Mom," she said. The words should have been tender. They landed like orders. Breakfast talk followed, clipped and choreographed. She asked about my sleep, then answered before I could. "She slept fine, Graham," she said, when he rushed past in his tie, coffee sloshing. I stayed quiet, tracing the rim of the bowl. They discussed plans for the weekend, for their upcoming inspection, for everything except where I fit in. My name didn't appear on the calendar she taped to the fridge. "We'll set your med schedule later," Callista added. I nodded as though the decision belonged to us both. After they left, I washed the dishes slowly, breathing through the faint tremor in my hands. The smell lingered. A nurse learns to trust her senses. Metallic meant wrong. I opened the pantry, found the bottle she'd set out by the vitamins. The label gleamed with cheerful fonts, but the seal was new, the pills too shiny. I scanned the barcode with my phone. Nothing matched. I took a photo, logged the time, and slipped one tablet into a tissue-lined pouch. No dramatics, no accusations, just data. The house grew still. Sunlight slanted across the counter, warm against my palm. I used the quiet to memorize the home's rhythm, the hum of the fridge, the whir of the ceiling fan, the slight creak in the third floorboard near the sink. I mapped everything: the trash route, the freezer's hidden compartment, the line of sight from the hallway camera to the stove. People call it paranoia. I call it procedure, by noon. Callista had texted, "Scheduled your checkup for tomorrow, just routine." I typed back a thumbs-up emoji. Let her think I was docile, easy. I brewed green tea, inhaled its honest smell. My reflection in the kettle looked older, but still steady. If this pattern repeated tomorrow, I'd escalate, quietly, properly, the way systems work when you know where to press. Dinner came with another bowl. "Less sugar this time?" she said, watching my face. I coughed into my napkin, the sound soft but deliberate, then dabbed my lips again with the same handkerchief. She smiled wider when I finished. Like a teacher pleased with a student, I matched her smile and thanked her. Later, in my room, I opened a small notebook and began an audit. Time, smell, taste, physical response. Nothing new yet. I refused to feel like a burden in my own son's house. I sent a brief text to Leona, an old colleague. Need to store biological samples safely. We'll explain later. Then I slid the handkerchief into a Ziploc bag, labeled it with the date and time, and tucked it under my folded sleep shirts. Night in Texas carries a kind of honesty. You can hear what people don't say. The air conditioner clicked off, the walls exhaled. Downstairs, a faint sound, a door latch, maybe the fridge. I counted footsteps. 1, 2, pause, then nothing. I kept my breathing slow, hand resting on the sealed handkerchief. If tomorrow they speak about me without looking at me, I whispered to the dark, I'll ask for the audit trail with a smile. Morning came with a clipboard and a pen, and a doctor who never met my eyes first. Callista drove us through the gray stretch of I-35, the radio murmuring headlines I didn't need. My stomach still carried the memory of yesterday's porridge, or maybe just what I suspected about it. The clinic lobby smelled like antiseptic and old coffee, the kind of mix that used to live in every hospital corridor I worked. Callista checked us in before I could reach my purse. She's here for her annual, she told the receptionist. Her tone landed neat as a signature. I just smiled and handed over my ID, pretending the air between us wasn't heavy. The waiting room TV hummed with a health commercial. Callista filled the intake forms herself, writing in clean loops. I watched the clock above the vending machine, 8:47, 8:51, marking time like old reflex. When the nurse called Mrs. Ellison, I rose on my own, but Callista stood first. That tiny moment, her half step in front of me, was small enough for others to miss. For me, it was data. In the exam room, the medical assistant asked about medications. Her eyes stayed on Callista while she typed. Mom takes calcium, D3, and a new supplement, right? Callista said before I opened my mouth. It's been great for her focus. I caught the phrase, for her focus. I spoke softly. I haven't started anything new. The assistant kept typing. I took out my notebook, jotting it all down, every word and the way they landed. She wrapped the cuff around my arm. Just relax, hun. I smiled. Relaxing isn't a measurable variable, I said gently. My blood pressure read normal, pulse steady. When she finished, I asked, may I have a copy of my vitals? She hesitated. They'll be in your My Chart. I confirmed the email on file, noticing a note on the screen. Password reset request, yesterday, 3:14 p.m. I made a small mark in my notebook and thanked her. Dr. Penn entered a minute later. White coat crisp, glasses fogging slightly from the hallway air. Callista, good to see you again, he said first. Then he looked at me as though remembering I was there. So, memory lapses? A bit of confusion? He asked, eyes flicking toward her clipboard. My voice stayed even. Actually, my memory is the reason Graham passed his pharmacology midterm, I said. I tutored him. His brows rose. The silence after felt like a reset. Callista chimed in. We've just noticed little things, like repeating questions. That happens, I replied, especially when I don't get full answers. I smiled, not sweetly, but firmly. Dr. Penn cleared his throat. Well, sometimes at this age, 68, I corrected, with full mental capacity and 30 years in critical care nursing. I listed my medications and known allergies without looking at notes. His pen slowed. He finally asked me how I'd been sleeping. When Callista mentioned the vitamins again, Dr. Penn nodded absently. That's fine. Keep those up. I lifted my gaze. Which vitamins would those be? Exactly? He blinked. The ones you brought? I shook my head. I haven't agreed to anything new. The room cooled a degree. I could feel Callista's smile tighten. Doctor, I said calmly, I'd like to review the medication list aloud and confirm each entry. He nodded. Still unsure why, I recited them, line by line, and ended with, "Please remove any item not verified by me personally." The keyboard clicked slower this time. Before leaving, I requested a copy of the HEP-A Release of Information form. I'll also need instructions for accessing and amending my records, I added. Dr. Penn looked up. "You want to review your audit trail?" "Yes," I said, smiling. "It's a habit from work. Documentation keeps everyone honest." Callista laughed softly, like I'd said something quaint. The doctor handed me a brochure. "Of course. We'll make sure you're listed as the decision maker about your care." His voice shifted, warmer, respectful. By the time we reached the parking lot, Texas heat had settled like syrup. Callista unlocked the car and chirped, "Good job, Mom. You handled that so well." "Thanks," I said. "Could you pop the trunk? I want to put this folder in." My phone buzzed, a text from Graham. "How's Mom doing?" I replied. "Dinner's on me tonight." The phrase had meaning he wouldn't catch yet. What I cook, I trust. Back home, I set 2 plates for lunch. "No vitamins today," I said casually, scooping rice and vegetables. Callista hesitated, half a beat, barely a blink. But I saw it. I rinsed a spoon, tucked it in a labeled bag, and slid it into the drawer where I kept the first sample. Patterns tell stories. I just had to collect enough of them. By nightfall, I'd packed new Ziplocs, a marker, and labels by date. My hands moved with the steady rhythm of a nurse prepping a shift. Each motion said, I am still competent, still aware, still documenting. I placed everything beside the folded handkerchief in my drawer and whispered to the quiet room, "Next time, we seal it properly. Tomorrow, the steam will rise again, and this time, the spoonful will go straight into a sealed bag with my name and the time." At dawn, I cleared a freezer shelf, laid out the bags and tape like a morning ritual. The sky outside the window was still the color of dishwater, soft and gray, the kind of quiet that lets your thoughts line up in neat rows. I wrote today's date, initials, and time on the first label. Each movement steadied me. Open bag, check seal, breathe. The hum of the refrigerator sounded like a promise, constant, mechanical, unbothered by emotion. Callista's footsteps came before her voice. "Breakfast soon, Mom," she called. "Of course," I said, cheerful enough to pass. I kept my notebook open on the counter, the day's header already written, 8:30, porridge sample, M1. When she set the bowl in front of me, steam curled upward in lazy ribbons. It smelled faintly floral again, too consistent to be accident. I coughed lightly, dabbed at my mouth, and while she turned toward the sink, I scooped a spoonful into a clean vial hidden under a napkin. The motion was small, practiced. I sealed the lid tight, pressed down the Ziploc strip until I heard the click, and whispered to myself, "M1 breakfast today." My phone camera caught the timestamp, 8:17 M. After she left for errands, I drove to Raphael's pharmacy on Springdale. He'd known me from years back when I picked up Graham's inhalers. "Hey, Miss Marjorie," he said. "Still keeping folks in line?" I smiled, trying to keep the data straight. I asked him about tamper-evident bags and temperature control for food samples. He looked curious, but not suspicious. "You checking storage conditions for research?" "Something like that," I said. He showed me a pack of opaque bags with color seals and a mini thermometer for small fridges. "Don't freeze too deep. Label every step," he advised. I bought 2 packs and thanked him. In the parking lot, I filmed a quick sequence. Bag number, my watch face, the pharmacy sign in the background, and my phone screen showing the exact minute. I spoke quietly into the mic. "No edits. Keep originals. Back up tonight." I'd learned that line long ago in the ICU. Chart what happened. not what you wished had happened. Back home, I wiped down the freezer shelf, set the thermometer inside, and watched the reading drop to a steady 22 degrees Fahrenheit. I placed M1 behind the bag of frozen peas, label facing away. My pen moved across the notebook. Custody, Marjorie Ellison, freezer, 10:14 a.m. A small arrow pointed to the next line. M2, planned for breakfast tomorrow. For the first time in weeks, I felt the rhythm of order returning. I studied the kitchen camera angle next. The lens covered the counter, but not the left side of the stove. Perfect. I practiced rinsing a spoon within sight, setting the bowl down naturally. If anyone ever watched footage later, it would show me calm, consistent, the kind of woman who could never be accused of drama. When Callista returned, she asked, "Did you take your vitamins?" "I'll stick to what the doctor and I reviewed," I said. She nodded, the corners of her mouth tightening. I rinsed the spoon, steady as a heartbeat, and dried it on the towel embroidered with her initials. That afternoon, I texted Leona, my old ICU partner. "Need lab recs for food toxicology. Chain of custody." She replied within minutes, "Duplicate samples. Photograph everything. No arguments. Just records." I starred the message and printed it for the folder. By evening, my dining table looked like a small operations center, printed templates, labeled folders, the chain of custody form with lines for collector, date time, storage, and transfer. I filled in today's entry, signed, and slipped the sheet into a manila envelope marked House, Kitchen, M. The neatness of it soothed me more than any sedative could. Night settled. I bent under the dining table and slid a small voice recorder beneath the leg. The red light blinked once before going dark. I tested it with the faint trickle of the faucet, just to be sure. Upstairs, my phone alarms were set. Freezer temp check, cloud backup, battery reminder. I sat at the edge of my bed, the hum of the freezer faint in the distance, steady as my pulse. "Proof over protest," I whispered. "That's the only way. If the house whispers after midnight, I'll have the tape. And if my records shift online, I'll have the timestamps. At 12:43 a.m. The house breathed wrong. A chair scraped against the kitchen tile, slow enough to sound human, deliberate. My eyes opened before my mind caught up. The blue glow from my phone flashed across the ceiling. Security alert, password reset attempt. I sat still, counting steps I didn't hear, measuring the silence. The air felt heavy, like it had something to hide. Downstairs, the hum of the fridge sounded louder than usual, steady but not innocent. I reached for my glasses, opened the email, and read twice before moving. Password reset requested at 12:43 a.m. I took a screenshot, then another, one wide, one close. My fingers didn't tremble. Old habits from charting at shift's end kept them steady. I opened my Health Access folder, saved each image with the IP and timestamp, then switched my MyChart login to a new password with two-factor authentication. "Who edits me?" I wrote in my notebook. 3 words that felt heavier than any diagnosis. By morning, the recorder under the dining table told its own story. The playback was faint but clear enough. A chair leg dragging, the fridge door creaking, and a woman's whisper. Too close to the microphone to be the TV. "Just keep her drowsy." My pulse jumped, then slowed into something sharper. I paused the recording, rewound, and played again, this time with headphones. The whisper was there, soft as fabric against tile. I noted the timestamp, exported the file, and duplicated it to both cloud storage and a small USB drive. Evidence doesn't panic, it documents. When Callista came down later, her smile was the same, bright and hollow. She slid a steaming bowl toward me. "Oatmeal with honey, for your rest," she said, setting down a new bottle labeled Sleep Support Complex. I smiled back, calm as morning light. "You're very thoughtful." I stirred once, pretending to taste, then used the same quiet cough from yesterday. As she turned for her phone, I slipped a spoonful into a small decoy vial, M0, and left it where it would be easy to find in the freezer's front corner. The real sample, M2, went into a hidden space behind the frozen peas. I sealed both with different initials, one for her eyes, one for mine. Later that morning, I compared photos of the freezer taken before and after breakfast. A smear of condensation marked where the bag of peas had shifted. Someone had opened it. The M0 vial tilted slightly left, its seal faintly creased. I took another photo, added a note, tamper indicator, visible variance. My handwriting was calm, every loop the same size. After documenting, I logged into the clinic portal and filed a formal audit trail request. Please provide record access logs and IP addresses for recent login attempts. I printed the confirmation receipt, folded it into my Health Access folder, and slid the folder into my desk drawer beside the labeled USB. By mid-morning, Graham dropped by with his coffee thermos and that distracted son look, half concern, half distance. "Mom," he said, "Callista mentioned the doctor wants a memory screen next time." I looked up from my notes. "I've already reviewed the protocols," I said gently. "You remember who used to run those tests, right?" He smiled but didn't meet my eyes. His phone buzzed with a message, and he read it too quickly before excusing himself. I watched his back as he left and wondered if he realized how much a mother notices. After lunch, I called Lone Star Analytical, explaining in clean, clinical language that I needed intake for a potential food toxicology sample. The technician's voice was efficient, reassuring. "We can dispatch a courier tomorrow morning," he said. "Keep your samples frozen and log every transfer." I thanked him, writing his name, badge number, and the reference ID in my log. For a moment, I felt that rare thing, professional calm. By dusk, I was back at my desk, copying files to 2 separate cloud accounts and 1 more USB stick. That last one I stitched into the hem of my robe with neat, invisible thread. Redundancy saves lives. That's something nursing teaches you early. I added a final line to the day's log. M2 sample secured, M0 observed for interference. All backups complete. I initialed it, closed the notebook, and pressed my palm to the cover, like a prayer. When the sun slipped behind the fence, I placed a second voice recorder beneath the stairs, just under the lip where the tile met the wood trim. I tested it with a soft whisper. Proof over protest, day 3. Then I set my alarms, freezer check, upload verification, temperature log, and stood in the doorway of my quiet kitchen. If her smile widens at lunch, I'll know which vial she touched, and the courier will be waiting on the curb. The doorbell rang twice before noon, the way news sometimes knocks. First a harmless tap, then a second that matters. I wiped my hands, opened the door, and found Mrs. Ruiz from next door holding a stack of misdelivered flyers and a grin. We traded 2 pleasantries about the heat, then she shuffled away under her visor. The bell chimed again almost immediately. A man in a navy polo stood on the porch with a silver cooler and a clipboard. His badge read, Lone Star Analytical. His shoes were clean. His eyes held the modest patience of people who keep schedules for a living. "Ms. Avery?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Samples are ready." At the dining table, I laid out the labeled tamper bags, M1 and M2, side by side. I kept my voice steady as he read the chain of custody form aloud, each box a small square of order. I filmed the seal numbers, the cooler's digital thermometer, the time on my watch. the address number above the door. He placed a probe inside the cooler, called out the temperature, and wrote it on the form. I initialed, dated, and signed. He did the same. We nodded like two people who prefer procedures to drama. On the porch, he lifted the lid and eased the bags inside as if they were sleeping birds. When he left, the house seemed to exhale. In the kitchen, Callista ladled soup into a bowl and slid it across the counter with a flourished spoon. "Light and easy," she said brightly, "and don't forget your vitamins." I met her smile with one of my own, gentle as good manners. "I'll stick to what the doctor and I reviewed," I said, rinsing a spoon that didn't need rinsing, letting the warm water fill the quiet. Her gaze flicked, brief, involuntary, toward the freezer. It was as small as a blink. But I've measured lives by heartbeats. Small things count. After lunch, I opened the freezer for ice and nothing else. The decoy vial, M0, sat a fraction closer to the lip than it had in yesterday's photo. Frost feathered a wider arc along the shelf. I took 2 pictures, one wide, one with a ruler against the box of peas, then logged the variants and signed my initials. Each letter crisp. Cold certainty builds slowly, like ice in a glass. It doesn't shout, it clinks. Graham came home between meetings, still wearing his lanyard. Phone in his palm like a second heartbeat. "How's the day, Mom?" he asked, but his eyes were on the screen. "Fine," I said. Courier picked up what I needed. He cleared his throat. "So, tests?" There was a carefulness to the word, as if he'd borrowed it from someone else. "Chain of custody to an independent lab," I said. "No conclusions yet." He nodded without committing, the way people do when they want peace more than truth. I wanted to touch his sleeve, but I touched the back of a chair instead. By mid-afternoon, an email pinged my phone. Intake confirmed. Samples received. A second message followed. Preliminary immunoassay screening suggests sedative class presence. Full quantitative results in 48-72 hours. I sat down before I fell down. The screen looked ordinary. The feeling did not. I downloaded the PDFs, saved them to both clouds, printed hard copies, and slid them into my folder. No triumph, no tears. Just the sober relief that comes when a compass points the same direction twice. I washed the lunch bowls and reset the kitchen like a stage before the next show. Dishes swapped shelves, recorder moved to a new corner, custody log updated and signed. I tucked a fresh Ziploc and a strip of painter's tape into my apron pocket. When routines shift in small ways, you see who notices. Toward dusk, I walked the sidewalk loop under the pecan tree canopy, letting the warm air iron out the day's creases. Dogs barked, a sprinkler clicked, a bicycle bell chimed. I rehearsed tomorrow's errands, bank appointment for account alerts, a message to the clinic requesting the full chart access report, a second courier on standby. No confrontations, no declarations, just the math of timelines and the quiet dignity of staying upright. Back home, I texted my old ICU colleague, prelim screen flagged sedatives, holding steady. She replied in less than a minute, as if she'd been waiting with me all afternoon. Documentation wins. Duplicate everything. Eat what you cook. I smiled at the last line. It read like a blessing and a boundary. Before bed, I stood on the porch with the light on and the folder in my arms. Traffic on Springdale hummed low, a tired river. I wrote tomorrow's list on a fresh page, each item a small rail across a dark bridge. Bank printouts, clinic audit logs, freezer photos, a courier call P. Me sightseeing, the night was warm, but my resolve was cooler than the silver box that left our house. I whispered to no one and to myself. Proof first, then truth. Inside, I set out ingredients for tomorrow's breakfast where I could see every step. a kind of contract with myself. Steel-cut oats, milk, salt, cinnamon. I wrote my initials on the carton with a marker and dated the jar of oats. A petty thing, maybe, but it steadied my hands. Callista passed through the kitchen on her phone, laughing at something that wasn't meant for me. "Need anything?" she tossed over her shoulder. "I'm all set," I said, staying kind. She opened the freezer for ice and paused a breath longer than habit would require. I kept drying a plate, eyes on the towel, counting a slow 4. Some answers arrive with noise. Others arrive with a held breath and a fingertip on a seal. She closed the freezer with a soft kiss of air. I set the folder on chair, plugged in my phone, and told my bones to rest. The house sighed. I let it. Morning brings numbers, bank numbers, chart logs, and the kind of math that never lies. Morning brings numbers, bank numbers, chart logs, and the kind of math that never lies. By 10, a whammy. The credit union lobby is quiet and faintly floral. I slide my ID under the glass and ask for the last 12 months of statements for the joint household fund and my personal savings. The teller prints until the machine sighs. Then a manager walks me to a side desk. We go page by page. Transfers 4,900, 9,800, moving to names I never hired. Delgado Facility SVCs. Kep Harlan Asak. Memos read, upgrades. Consulting? I circle dates that match mornings when my head felt packed with wool and oatmeal tasted metallic. The manager watches my pen, says nothing, then opens one more document. It's a scanned convenience authorization, allowing online transfers from both accounts. The signature is neat and pinched. And M.K., mine is looser. Arthritis writes its own style. I keep my voice steady. That isn't my hand. She doesn't argue. She slides over a fraud packet, initiates a hold on future ACH to those vendors, and writes a case number on a yellow sticky. I ask for camera timestamps from the date the form was created. She nods and types, out in the car with the AC blowing warm for a minute. I open my clinic portal. Under account, then security. Access and audit. I request the full log. A CSV appears, a proxy account created 2 months ago. Edits to my medication list and care plan notes on 3 evenings. After hours. I save it to 2 clouds and email a copy to myself. Another line stands out, user, C, Langley, front desk. Origin IP listed. A quick geolocation check lands the pin inside our neighborhood grid. My hands cool on the wheel. People think harm looks like shouting. Often it wears a login and calls itself helpful. Back home, the kitchen smells like lemons. Callista glides in with a paper bag and a smile that never quite breaks. "How was the bank?" she asks. "Routine," I say. Graham mentions a contractor named Delgado coming Friday to check the gutters. I nod as if gutters explain everything, then adjust the small recorder behind the fruit bowl so it points at the landline cradle. I cook a simple lunch so I can hear the house, hum of fridge, a ring from the living room. I don't pick up. From the hallway, Callista does. I keep chopping celery and even beets, giving the recorder time to listen. Later, with the faucet running to camouflage my review, I press play and hear exactly what I need. Yes, reroute to Harlan. No, she's tightening access. No, I used the clinic login, but they're asking for an audit. A soft laugh. We'll get her to rest again. I pause the audio and look at my hands. They're steady. I write the timestamp in my notebook and match it to the clinic log and the bank transfers I circled. The lattice sets clean. Graham drifts through for coffee. "Mom, you okay?" he asks. Eyes on the machine. "I'm fine," I say, just keeping records current. He smiles past me and leaves. I test the freezer seals and take a fresh photo of the shelf, then slip the phone into my apron pocket and finish the soup. In the afternoon, I call the credit union to add a no exceptions alert, no external transfers without my in-person approval. I request certified copies of the forged authorization and the teller log from that day. While I wait, I open the CSV on a larger screen and highlight the edits line by line. The columns look clinical, which helps. By evening, I have a binder on the dining table, white 1.5 inches. Inside go tabs in an order a tired brain can follow. 1. Bank dispute and case number. 2. Signatures tidy stranger versa. My own. 3. Audit printouts with proxy creation and edit times. 4. A typed transcript and a QR code linking to the audio. On the cover, I print, "If anything happens to me, deliver to attorney." I slide the binder into a canvas tote and tuck it under my bed frame where my hand can find it before my feet do. I copy the audio to a tiny USB and sew it into the hem of my robe, while a baking show mutters, "The needle pricks once, a bright pinch." That night, when the house finally cools, I sit with tea and the silver of the porch light on the steps. I think about signatures and passwords and the way a son's face can look polite when it should look concerned. Anger moves through like weather, arriving, raining, passing. What stays is the pressure that makes plans. Before bed, I write tomorrow's list in a block, print a judge could read, attorney consult, notary for affidavits, second call to the lab, check my chart for new access attempts. Then I close the notebook and rest my palm on it. The house makes one small sound in the kitchen, ice shifting in its tray. I let it pass. If money, medicine, and metadata say the same thing, the next place to seek truth is a lawyer's locked drawer. By 8:30, the brass plate on the door read H. Whitmore, attorney. The hallway smelled like old paper and lemon polish, the scent of boundaries drawn in ink. I climbed the narrow stairs and laid my binder on his desk. "I need verification," I said, "and a plan to keep proof safe." Whitmore nodded once and unlocked a drawer. From inside, he lifted a sealed envelope bearing my name and the date from years ago. "Your original estate file," he said. The notary's seal was unbroken, the paper thick, the signatures honest in their fatigue. I hadn't seen that shade of blue ink since my husband's last Christmas. He compared it to the addendum Graham had supposedly found at home, a crisp forgery pretending to simplify inheritance terms. Side by side, they didn't match. The stroke direction was wrong, the witness line blank. "This is a photocopied trace," Whitmore said. His voice clipped. He drafted a sworn statement on letterhead. "Any document claiming to amend these provisions without in-office execution is void." I initialed each page. Vindication came quiet, edged with grief. We built structure around the storm. 3 redundancies, notarized copies for me, encrypted scans for him, and physical storage off-site. "We'll also file a notice of suspected fraud with the county clerk," he said. "If anyone tries to register the forged version, it will trigger review." Then he opened a small drawer and slid across a safe deposit key. Brass, light as a promise. "Frostbank, Vault 1327, he said. "Keep your originals there. You'll sleep better." I signed the access agreement and listed him as co-custodian only in case I'm medically incapacitated. At Frostbank, the vault corridor was colder than any freezer in my house. A manager escorted me to a private booth, one by one. I placed inside my original will, property deed, bank dispute files, the clinic audit CSV, the audio card from the kitchen recorder, and a sealed letter to Graham dated today. "For when truth is ready." The note read, "Outside." Whitmore made a quick call to a contact at the state registry. His brows lifted. "Your so-called Delgado Facility Services is a P.O. box. Their listed accountant?" He showed me a screen, K. Harlan Associates, the same name from the questionable bank transfers. A shell within a shell. he said. My stomach sank, but anger steadied my hands. We drove past the cul-de-sac HOA office, where I asked to review camera logs for our street. Policy allowed residents to request footage involving their own property. The clerk queued up 2 clips. A white SUV pulled into my driveway at 9:47 p.m. on one transfer date. Again, 2 weeks later, in the grainy light, a woman's silhouette stepped out carrying a thin folder, paused at the porch, and left fast. I didn't need to see her face. I knew the tilt of her shoulders. The HOA emailed me the time-stamped stills. Back home, I saved them to 2 clouds, printed a set for Whitmore, and labeled one envelope in plain pen. If anything happens to me, it went behind the pantry's false back panel, a space that once held my husband's fishing gear. At dusk, I brewed chamomile and let the day settle. Outside, children chalked hearts on the sidewalk. Inside, my kitchen felt like a command post disguised as a home. Paper is loyal, I thought. But people aren't. So tomorrow I would see who Callista really answered to. At 9:05, I dialed the number Whitmore traced and let it ring twice. A man answered with a sanded voice, low and practiced. "This line's for settlement updates only." He didn't say hello. He didn't ask who I was. He sounded like someone used to telling people where to stand. I kept my breath even and let him talk into the small space my silence made. A chair creaked on his end. Paper slid. A muffled second voice asked, "Langley file?" He didn't cover the receiver. I ended the call, saved the log, and set the phone face down on the kitchen table, like a card I was ready to play later. I replayed the clip at half speed, the way we used to review trauma codes, listening for the sound underneath the sound. The man said, "Settlement, not invoice." He said, "Updates, not status." It had the smell of a plan bigger than our house. I caught Langley file clean this time and wrote it in my notebook next to the clinic clerk's name. C. Langley. If this was coincidence, it was trying too hard. I forwarded the audio to Whitmore with the timestamp, my carrier's call log, and the tower location. The phone showed when I hung up. Paper is loyal, so are raw files. While the kettle warmed, I opened our joint account portal to review something that had nagged me since the bank visit. Buried in the menu, behind budget tools, sat a link for associated businesses. I clicked through to a neat row of tiles, each with a soft gray logos. One read, House Projects, LLC. I don't own an LLC. The tile opened a ledger, deposits from our household fund, transfers to Delgado Facility Services, notes like porch repair, HVAC check, consulting. Authorization listed 2 usernames, G. Langley and C. Langley. I printed the page, printed again when the first sheet curled, then saved a PDF to both clouds. I didn't cry. I put another check mark on my grid. Whitmore called back before 10. "Got your clip," he said. "That voice belongs to a number registered to K. Harlan Associates. That ties your Delgado funnel to the handler line." He paused. "I'm triggering pre-alerts. Quiet flags go to the bank, your clinic, and the pharmacy benefit manager. It doesn't freeze your life, but it forces verification before any change. If someone tries to move your money or alter your chart, we'll get notified." I pictured thin red strings connecting my freezer, the HOA camera stills, the CSV audit, and this phone voice. The web didn't feel abstract anymore. It felt like lines I could pull. By noon, the house was church quiet. Callista slid into the kitchen with a tea tray as if she'd practiced the entrance. "Mint and chamomile," she said, almost humming. "Good for the nerves." She poured with both hands on the pot, a sign she wanted credit for care. I smiled in that small way Texans do when they're being polite and told her it looked lovely. The cup sat warm against my palm. I didn't drink. The little recorder hummed behind the row of cookbooks, a hymn only I knew. Her smile cracked in the middle. "You've been busy calling people," she said, bright as porch light, hard as a nail. I kept my eyes on the steam. "Just confirming paperwork," I said. "When you've been a nurse as long as I have, you learn to read fine print before you swallow anything." Her gaze flicked toward the freezer door and back to my face. It was quick, a blink, but it was a compass needle. I set the cup down and reached for a dish towel. "Graham home for lunch?" I asked. "No," she said, too quickly. "He's on a sight walk with Delgado." I folded the towel and thought about empty mailboxes that collect checks. The phone buzzed on the counter. Whitmore again, shorter this time. We matched the handler line to an operations cell inside K. "Harlan Associates," he said. "Same entity on your transfer trail? The circle's closed." A second email landed as he spoke. "Fraud unit notice. Pending withdrawal of $42,000 from House Projects, LLC, had been flagged and locked." I read the subject line twice, then forwarded it to my own archive. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. The tea in front of me had gone cool. I still didn't drink. Around 3, the air shifted the way it does before a storm. Callista wiped a spotless counter and tried on a voice I'd heard her use with contractors. "We all just want what's best," she said, soft and reasonable. "It's been a lot. Your move, your health. Maybe let me handle some of the forms." She rested a hand on my notebook. I moved the notebook an inch. "I appreciate the help," I said, and let the sentence trail off like a rope she could trip on or step over. "But my doctor and I agreed about access yesterday. Any changes to my chart go through me." Her smile held. Her jaw did not. I stepped onto the porch with my phone and called the HOA office. "Security copies ready," the clerk said. "We put them in your owner portal." I downloaded both clips and the still frame that caught a profile, leaving my porch on a night money moved. Back inside, I opened a new manila folder and wrote external across the tab. In went the K, Harlan printout, the LLC ledger, the fraud lock email, the HOA still. I didn't need to win an argument in my kitchen. I needed to win the record. By late afternoon, Graham's truck pulled in and idled. He came in with Son on his shoulders and asked if we needed anything from HEB. I handed him a list with bread and fruit and nothing that could hide powder. He kissed my cheek like he used to when he was little and ran out the door with the same impatience. In the quiet that followed, I felt the old ache of missing a person who is technically right in front of you. Before dusk, Whitmore called once more. "One more measure," he said. "I'd like you to log any direct contact attempts as incidents. If anyone questions your capacity, we file a notarized affidavit from your primary and a neuropsych referral of our choosing, not theirs. I've also placed your estate notices on a monitor list with the county. No one files around you without pinging me." I wrote it all down. Then wrote one more line no one asked me to. I am not alone on paper. Evening settled. Somewhere on Springdale, a siren rose and faded. I duplicated my backup drive, labeled it in block letters, and slipped it into the robe, hem slit I'd stitched myself. I folded the day into a list for tomorrow. Talk to HOA security. Purchase a second external drive. Print clean copies for the vault, and make soup I could season without advice. I washed the teacup and set it upside down to dry. On the porch, the cicadas had found their rhythm. I rested both hands on the rail and let the Texas heat work the stiffness out of my knuckles. "I may look alone," I said to the yard, "but the law already knows my name." Inside, my phone buzzed once, an alert from Whitmore's system that a change had been attempted and blocked. Paper is loyal. So are alarms. By dawn, one alert had already triggered, only this time. The knock on my door wasn't from the courier. The knock came before sunrise, a sharp rap that made the porch light shiver against the glass. When I opened the door, a Travis County deputy stood there in a damp windbreaker, hat tucked under his arm. "Ma'am, a neighbor reported a possible break-in around 3, he said. Professional but kind. I stepped back so he could see the hall all the way to the kitchen. My robe pocket hummed. The little recorder was already rolling. "May I walk the perimeter?" he asked. "Please do," I said, and slid on my sneakers. We circled the house in a slow, careful arc. The grass sparkled with sprinkler beads, but the mulch under the kitchen window showed a dark, fresh-scooped line, like a heel had dragged through it. The deputy's flashlight caught thin scratch arcs at the back lock, silver against black paint. Beneath the sill, he lifted a black nitrile glove with tongs, then a white paper packet stamped "Herbal Sleep." He bagged both. I kept my face smooth. "Case number?" I asked. "You'll have it before I leave." Inside, we sat at the dining table. He typed while I gave a clean account. Time of knock, where I'd been sleeping, that I hadn't left the house. I signed the report with a steady hand. "Could you request directed patrol tonight?" I asked. He nodded, clipped. I passed him my attorney's card. "Please coordinate evidence chain with Mr. Whitmore," I added. He tucked it into his notebook and promised the number by email within the hour. Before he left, the doorbell chimed again. Miss Patel from across the cul-de-sac stood in a cardigan and slippers, hair pinned back, phone in hand. "I think my ring caught something," she said, voice hushed as a church aisle. On her screen, a sedan idled at the curb, lights off. A figure in a pale hoodie moved toward my fence, then dissolved into the dark. The camera grabbed a partial plate. The deputy radioed it in, thanked her, and asked for the clip. She squeezed my shoulder and said, "You're not alone." Graham shuffled into the kitchen as the deputy stepped out. Sleep-puffed eyes, annoyed face. "Mom, what is this?" he asked, glancing at the patrol car. "This is dramatics." I poured coffee and slid him a mug. "The county has a case number, not a feeling," I said. He stared at the tabletop like it might throw him a rope, then wordlessly set his old house key on the counter. The act landed between us with a thud I didn't let echo. By mid-morning, my phone rang with a bank number I'd saved under fraud unit. The woman's voice was crisp. An attempt at 312 to move $800 from House Projects LLC was blocked by the precautionary lock your attorney requested. We've preserved the IP and device fingerprint. I wrote down the timestamp and underlined it. It hugged the same window as the ring clip. Numbers don't lie. They lean together until even polite people have to look. Whitmore called after lunch. Data preservation letters are out. Clinic, bank, HOA, telecom. We drafted a temporary protective notice under elder exploitation statutes. If contact crosses a line, we file... I could hear the tap of his pen. "Keep logging. No confrontations." "I'm a nurse," I said. "I prefer charts to speeches." After we hung up, I taped the case number inside my green ledger and locked the drawer with the quiet satisfaction of a drawer that now had a purpose. Late afternoon brought a bright smile in yoga pants. "Just checking on you," Callista said, setting a reusable bag on the counter and letting her eyes slide over the room. Sink, stove, freezer, back door. The kitchen gleamed because I had made it gleam. The evidence packet the deputy had bagged was nowhere in sight. I asked about her commute. She chattered. When her gaze skimmed the door, I said, casually, "They collected DNA from a glove out back." Her smile trembled, then stretched wider than needed. Dusk thinned the heat to a breath you could keep. I looped the router through a battery backup and tested the porch camera, then set a spare phone to capture a wide bed of audio from the hall. The deputy's cruiser made slow circles of our cul-de-sac, headlights washing the mailboxes like tide. I watered the fern by the porch and listened to the quieting street, a dog chain clinking, a screen door, someone's late news murmuring lines I didn't need. Night settled, and with it a line I could live with. I texted Whitmore, attaching the incident number and Ms. Patel's clip, all logs saved. Wrote, "At the counter, I placed 2 envelopes, one addressed to myself with today's notes, one to the vault. I let the porch light burn steady. If they come again," I told the empty room, "they won't meet a bulb, they'll meet the law." Then I set my recorder on the nightstand and slept like a person who'd built a fence out of paper and time. By morning, a car I hadn't ordered idled at my curb, hazard lights tapping like a fingernail on glass. The driver texted my name as though it belonged to him. The porch light clicked off at daybreak, and I stood at the window long enough to feel the old ache of wanting to trust anything that arrives neatly at your door. I didn't step outside. I reached for the phone and asked, "Mr. Whitmore, do you have a minute for one more note?" I made coffee and let the kitchen hum, reminding myself that steady habits are a kind of shield. The sedan idled like a patient animal, silver paint blinking in the morning sun. A text lit my phone, my full name, spelled right. No hello, no pickup code. When I asked which app he drove for, the man only smiled through the windshield and tapped his clipboard. "Courtesy ride," he called, voice too smooth. Arranged by family. On the porch, my camera watched, my own phone watched back. "Which family member?" I asked. He looked at his notes as if an answer might appear there by magic. I opened the door only as wide as a palm. "Call my son," I said. "You should already have his number." He laughed like we were neighbors sharing a joke. Dispatch already verified everything. The trunk popped with a puff. I saw bungee cords and a folded blanket. Through the rear window, I caught the dull square of a child lock. He drifted a step closer, hands open. Salesman mild. "Let me help you down the stairs, ma'am." I kept one foot inside and one foot planted where the porch cam could see it all. My thumb found the pendant under my collarbone and pressed hard until it buzzed. A quiet chain began. GPS pinged to 911, auto text to Whitmore's office. A chirp from the porch siren that sounded like a scolded bird. "I'll be right out," I said, and pocketed my phone with the camera still running. The driver's eyes cut to the street, recalculating. From inside the house, the kettle clicked off. I locked the door behind me, loud enough for the microphone to catch. I angled toward Ms. Patel's mailbox across the cul-de-sac and narrated in a calm voice I used to save for panicked families. "Silver Toyotas, partial plate N75. Driver, mid-40s, blue cap, gray jacket." He moved in, guiding, not gripping, easing me toward the open rear door like I might doze into agreement. "Watch your step," he said. I planted both feet. "I'll wait here," I replied. Somewhere a siren turned a corner and remembered my street. The cruiser swung in with a wash of light. The driver chose running. He cut left past the pecan tree, but neighbors were already on their porches with phones held high like little lighthouses. 2 officers gave chase. A third blocked the sedan with her bumper. In the scuffle, one sneaker skidded across my sidewalk. Minutes later, they had his phone. A printed route with my address at the top and a pencil arrow to a storage yard that hadn't rented a unit in months. I sat on the porch step and breathed until the air cooled in my lungs. I told the first officer every line. His first text, the trunk, the child locks, the way his hand hovered just above my elbow. I showed the SOS log timestamp, let them pull the porch video, and gave consent to image my phone for the recorded exchange. On speaker. Whitmore's voice arrived steady as a metronome, threading today into yesterday's file numbers. Please note the existing elder exploitation case and bank fraud lockout, he said. I signed 2 forms and sipped water until my hand stopped shaking. Detectives started connecting threads before the sidewalk chalk dried. The driver's call list showed numbers with no names, one linked to a H. Wright, another tied to a Shell LLC that shared an accountant with Delgado. A third pointed toward a prepaid line used by a clinic employee I'd only met as a login entry. Your pre-alerts helped, the detective admitted. They froze money, and they froze nerve. I nodded. Freezing nerve is a good start. Before noon, the net widened. A statewide bulletin went out for Hale Wright and a woman using the alias L. Darling, on a lease 2 cities over. The charges on the warrants read like a ledger I hadn't asked to keep. Attempted kidnapping, conspiracy, financial exploitation of an elderly person. The detective closed his notebook. We'll attempt arrests today, he said. Stay home, lock the doors. If anyone shows up with a clipboard, you don't sign anything. I'm done signing what isn't mine, I told him. Graham called from work and didn't try to make a joke of it. Mom, I'm coming home, he said, breath ragged. I didn't order any ride, I swear. In the background, I heard a chair scrape and someone ask if he was okay. Stay inside, he said again, softer. There was a pause I filled for him. I'm safe, I answered. And I have a case number you can read when you get here. He exhaled like someone had set down a box he'd carried too far. By late afternoon, Whitmore had an emergency protective order drafted with names and aliases, stacked like fence pickets. A judge signed a temporary restraining order. Service would go out with the warrants. I screwed a door brace into the jamb, set 2 mugs on the counter, and brewed tea because people who intend to endure keep their rituals. I texted the new number into my green ledger and wrote 1 line beneath it. Today I chose not to be taken. Tomorrow I choose to finish this. The summons came with the morning sun, ink still tacky at the edges. By first light, I was on the marble, shoes whispering, heartbeat steady. Whitmore walked beside me carrying our binder like a brick. Graham met us at the security line, eyes clear the way they were when he was 10 and honest. The bailiff posted the docket. Our case sat between a noise complaint and a grand jury motion, ordinary and loaded. I took a bench near the flag and let the fabric anchor my breath. Callista arrived a few minutes later in a blazer the color of unripe pears, counsel in tow, chin high but eyes refusing my face. The DA's liaison gave me a nod. The APD detective from yesterday's chase sat 2 rows back, jaw set. When the judge took the bench, the room reset to civics quiet. Ground rules were crisp. No speeches, documents speak first, witnesses answer only what is asked. I folded my hands and thought of steam turning cold. Paper before pain, Whitmore had said. He began with the bones, my original will and property file, certified and sealed years ago, notary logs intact, signatures with the small tremor my joints give me on page 3. He set the forged addendum beside it under an evidence cam. Even from the cheap seats, you could see the lie, the steady student hand M that never belonged to me, the witness line blank where a breath should be signed. The judge scanned, then lifted her eyes, unimpressed. Next came the ledger and the lab, my green notebook. Ordinary as groceries, now carried dates that lined up with photographs of freezer thermometers and bag numbers. The toxicology report slid into the record with a pharmacist's calm voice explaining the sedative class, dosage range, and what a sleepy morning can do to an older brain, finding the stairs. I did not look at Graham. He did not look away. The money trail followed like a dog that had known all along where the bone was buried. A bank investigator testified about transfers in neat, almost shy amounts, $4,900, $9,800 labeled home upgrades to shells tied to a name the detective had already said out loud, Hale Wright. Dates matched my drowsy mornings and the day the forged addendum surfaced on my kitchen counter. Statements bloomed on the screen, and my son's jaw went hard. The detective bridged the domestic to the criminal with a patient line. He walked the judge through yesterday's courtesy ride, the child locks, the route to a storage yard, the seized phone, the calls that hopscotched from burner to accountant to the same shell that ate my money. Defense tried to fence him with words like speculative, but the judge let the maps speak. He drew the arrow. I felt the room believe him. Cross-examination turned to smoke and sugar, misunderstandings. Defense called them benign supplements. Sleep support? Helping a busy husband with forms. Callista's voice was calm until Whitmore asked who handled the papers on the day the addendum appeared. I did, she said before her lawyer could touch her sleeve. The word hung in the air. Whitmore nodded once and read a timestamp that matched her mouth. Then came the mic drop I didn't practice for. The DA's liaison authenticated a short clip, hash-matched from law enforcement intake, Callista's voice, smaller but unmistakable, telling Hale Wright they needed the old will out of the way. Defense lunged for chain of custody. Cordite read the numbers. In my head, I was back at the stove, watching steam curl. I had known this day would boil. When orders came, they sounded simple in the judge's even tone. Emergency protective order granted. No contact, no proximity zones. Temporary financial conservatorship issued to Graham with Whitmore as co-signatory for oversight. The forged addendum referred for criminal review, the statewide warrants from yesterday noted on the record. A full evidentiary hearing set on the calendar like a dentist visit. In the hallway, sound rushed back, heels, murmurs, the soft whir of a copier. Graham stood in front of me without theater. "I'm sorry," he said. Not a boy, not a plea. Just a sentence that fit the air. I nodded once. "We protect the quiet until this is done," I answered. He understood the rule. Whitmore slid a fresh manila envelope into my hands. Certified copies. Next steps. A checklist like a bridge. Outside. Morning had grown its spine. The flag pulled tight in a steady breeze, and the stone under my palm held the night's cool like a kept promise. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt oriented. My house would not be just a place to sleep tonight. It would be a position to hold, a yard with boundaries, a kitchen where steam meant breakfast, not a plan. I followed Whitmore down the steps, our shadows straight, our pace unhurried. Justice, I reminded myself, is patient. It makes you bring receipts, prefers dates to tears, and moves forward even when hands shake holding the copies all the way. Today, at home, I set the door brace and taped the judge's orders inside the pantry where flour used to sit. I brewed plain porridge for myself. Oats, salt, milk, no more, no less. I ate it slowly at the table with the window open. Somewhere down the block, a mower coughed awake. I washed my bowl and left it drying face up. A small white moon catching the last of the morning. The phone did not ring. That silence felt earned. The sun found me before the alarm did, 1 week since court, and the house finally breathed with me instead of against me. I still kept the deadbolt, though I'd stopped using the door brace. Coffee steamed beside the judge's minute orders spread across the table. The word "no contact" underlined twice. My phone buzzed, a message from Whitmore. Warrants executed overnight, both in custody. I whispered. Good. To the quiet kitchen and let the steam blur the print. By 8, the calls began. The kind no one wants but everyone expects. The DA liaison confirmed charges: forgery, fraud, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping. Each word landed without surprise. An HR email from the hospital followed. Internal review regarding conflict of interest. I didn't forward it to Graham. I didn't reply. Silence is sometimes the sharpest professionalism there is. I closed the laptop and went outside to feed the birds. Graham's knock came just after 9. One single knock, hesitant but steady. He stayed on the porch. No assumptions. We sat on the steps, knees nearly touching, and watched a squirrel cross the fence line. "I should have seen it," he said. "I didn't wanna." I nodded. "You wanted peace, not proof." He asked what repair could even look like. Separate addresses, shared transparency, counseling. I told him. And patience. You earn it back day by day. His eyes stayed wet but clear. He reached into his pocket and pulled out my late husband's watch. The one Callista once claimed needed professional cleaning. The brass felt heavier than memory. I wound it once, and the tick returned, a small, living sound. "Keep it," Graham said, "until Whitmore redraws everything." I smiled, not soft, but sure. That's exactly how it'll be. The tick followed us through the next silence like a heartbeat that had been waiting for permission. At noon, an officer stopped by, respectful in tone, holding a clipboard. "Protective orders finalized, Main T, ma'am," he said, sliding the envelope across my porch rail. "Patrol will swing by nights for the next 30 days. I thanked him and pinned one copy on the fridge. It wasn't fear, it was fact. A line that held because I drew it myself. He tipped his hat. "Good to see someone prepared." I smiled. You'd be surprised what preparedness looks like in an old nurse. By afternoon, the local news segment ran. Hospital employee placed on administrative leave pending review of misconduct allegations. They didn't say her name, but everyone who'd seen us at the grocery store would know. I muted the TV halfway through, slid my phone into the drawer beside the green ledger, and shut both. Justice doesn't need applause. It needs completion. Later. Graham returned with paperwork of his own, a letter he'd drafted, accepting joint oversight of my accounts with Whitmore and a financial literacy course the court recommended. "My idea," he added quickly. I nodded. "Then add one line, you will never speak on my behalf again." He hesitated, then signed. We ate chili from one pot. When I joked about porridge, he half laughed, half winced. It was enough. In the garden the next morning, I planted new tomato starts in the soft soil, labeling each with names I liked better than dates: Resolve, Witness, Mercy. The neighbor's grandkids waved from across the street. I waved back with the hand that used to tremble. Wind brushed the chimes under the eaves, and for once the house didn't sound like a vault. It sounded like living, before sunset. I wrote one last letter, addressed to Callista, but meant only for the drawer. You taught me what happens when people confuse access with affection. I've learned. I filed it behind the court orders and set a calendar reminder for the evidentiary hearing. Dinner was simple. One plate, one chair, no apology for either. Night arrived soft and honest. I locked the door, checked the watch, poured tea. The tick was steady now, the kind of sound that fills a room instead of haunting it. I thought of all the please and I'm sorry I used to hand out like breath mints, and how little I needed them now. Justice here isn't loud. It ticks. It holds. It keeps time for the living. And tonight, that includes me. As a mother in her late years, here's what I learned. Quiet isn't surrender. Documentation is compassion for your future self. Boundaries are love with a spine. If someone sidelines your voice, at a clinic, a bank, or your own table, Pause, breathe, and ask for the record. Choose proof over panic. Protect your health, your money, and your dignity, and model that strength for your family. What would you have done differently? Have you faced a polite betrayal? Tell me where you're watching from. If this story reached you, drop a 1 in the comments and please subscribe to the channel for more true stories of courage.